I swear this show just keeps getting better and better. Episode 7 of Gen V, the penultimate episode, has just been released, and what an episode it was. I described last week's episode as perfect, but this was one that was just as good but in a completely different way. With deaths being prominent, Shetty's motive for creating a virus being revealed, many The Boys references being included, and Victoria Neuman doing what she does best, this could be my favourite episode of the season. So with that, let's recap, break down, and explain all that there was to take away from the episode. So let's get into it. Here is Gen V Episode 7 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. What was Shetty's motive? Within this episode, we found out exactly why Shetty wanted to create the virus that eradicated all of the soups. We saw just how evil of an individual that she was when we saw the brutal effect of the virus on the soups that were suffering in the opening section of the episode, and she still wanted to find a way to make it more contagious, to make it airborne instead of having it spread through the passing of fluids, something which would have made it out of control and impossible to manage. We saw that Shetty met with Mallory, a character that's all too familiar within the Boys series, and she informed her of the virus that they'd been working on in the woods. Within this scene, we saw that Mallory told her to drop what she was working on, as the pain that she felt from losing her husband and daughter wouldn't go away with the work that she was doing, and how what she was doing in that moment was all-consuming of her mind. Mallory made a brief reference to a man that works in her circle who has a similar mindset to Shetty. This was definitely a direct reference to the man himself, Billy Butcher, as obviously he had the pain of feeling as though he'd lost his wife at the hands of a soup, and he eventually did. After the discussion, we saw that Mallory had been recording the entire conversation with Shetty. This means that whoever was on the receiving end would know all about the virus that was created. I think this is either somebody from the Boys, maybe Billy, or it could be somebody from the CIA. So I think this is something that's going to be tying into the story of Season 4 of The Boys when it does eventually come out. As the episode went on, we saw that Jordan and Marie went into Shetty's office and were snooping around, and they found a document which was centered around a plane crash that happened where the passengers died on board. Two of the passengers that were on board the plane were Shetty's husband and daughter, two people who she lost on that day. This was deemed to be a terrorist attack, but as we know, we saw the events of this plane crash play out in Season 1 Episode 4 of The Boys, and the plane came crashing to the ground due to the actions of Homelander, and we saw that he didn't even attempt to try and save any of them. In fact, this was where we saw Homelander's evil side for one of the first times. Seeing him threaten the helpless, panicking passengers with his laser vision and said he'd use it if they didn't sit down and comply with their death that they didn't expect only moments earlier. Queen Maeve wanted to save them, but even she didn't stick around to attempt to save anybody. This is where Shetty's outright hatred for soups comes from, and there was a line that was spoken by a soup in a different section of the episode which really highlighted the mindset that Shetty hated. A student said, "We're superheroes, we can do anything." And in this instance, with Homelander being praised as some kind of hero even though he was responsible for the humans that died on the plane, it made Shetty want to devote the rest of her life to destroying the very kind that broke her family into pieces and sent her into mourning. Victoria Neuman is a bloodbender. Within this episode, we saw that most of the soups at Godolphin University were on the side of voting for Homelander rather than Bob Singer and Neuman, just like the large group of people that we saw at the end of The Boys Season 3, as Rufus and everybody else was chanting for Neuman to get off the stage and that they didn't agree with her policies. They, however, didn't know that she was a soup. The talk that was taking place was very much part of her campaign as VP, and getting the demographic of young soups on the side of voting for Bob Singer. However, it didn't really go to plan with it all kicking off. Instead, we had a far more valuable conversation come out of this scene with Marie and Neuman. Marie wanted to tell Neuman of the virus and the testing that was going down at the woods, and she did tell her successfully, and Neuman bought it. Something which tied into the final scene where she blew Cardos's head off in the parking lot. However, what we saw in this conversation was that Victoria Neuman had the exact same powers as what Marie does. Marie felt the compound V that was in Neuman's blood when she looked at her, which is what gave Marie the revelation that Neuman was in fact a soup. We saw that Neuman had the exact same powers when she cut her hand and she was able to manipulate and control the blood that came out of her, just like Marie can. We also found out that Neuman had been aware of Marie for a long time and knew all about her, saying that she even had an influence over her getting into Godolphin, because she knew that they had the same powers and she thought that she was the only one until Marie was registered at Red River. Now, I've been calling Marie the most powerful soup that there could possibly be due to the fact that she's a bloodbender, but this has now made me look at Neuman in a completely different light. I thought she was just a head popper, but now, whoa, she's goated. With Neuman telling Marie to go back to being a student and to not worry about the virus because she was going to deal with it. She even teased her with the possibility of being in the Seven and finding her sister who she hadn't seen in a long while. But it's clear to see that Marie, the strong-willed individual that she is, isn't just going to step aside. The group will be divided. During the climax of this episode, we saw something happen which is quite literally going to divide the group for good. We saw that Shetty arrived back at her house and Cate was sitting down on the sofa waiting for her. In this moment, we saw the genuine care that Shetty had for Cate, and although she was manipulating her and gaslighting her, I actually think that Shetty looked at Cate like a daughter and didn't view her as a soup like the others. I think she would have actually spared her. However, Shetty was wrong to underestimate her, because when the group arrived at Shetty's, we saw that she was under the influence of Cate. Cate essentially made Shetty reveal to them everything that was going on, and that Godolphin University was actually a lie and a front for the soup students to be monitored and tested on by the staff. The founder of the university, Thomas Godolphin, was a behavioral scientist that wanted to monitor the behavior of soups and find out what made them tick, hence the birth of the most prestigious university which attracted soups from all around the country, a good way to get them to be monitored. Once the information was revealed, we saw Cate make Shetty end things for herself in the most brutal of fashion, and she even prevented Marie from helping her. Something which also highlighted Marie's biggest weakness, her PTSD, as the blood reminded her of what happened on the afternoon where she discovered her powers and her parents were killed. This showed a clear divide in the group as nobody else wanted Cate to do that extreme of an action, and it was quite Homelander-esque in terms of the harshness, abruptness, and brutality that was emitted. The only person in the room that agreed with her views was Sam, and that was most likely because he had experienced firsthand the pain and suffering that was put on him through Shetty and Cardosa. With it looking as though Cate is going to be going off and rallying up the victims of the woods in the next episode, and Sam looking like he's going to be joining her side, the group are most definitely going to be split, as they'll most likely look to take down Cate, as her views could see her ending up being killed in order to be stopped. She's essentially adopted the same mindset as what Shetty had about humans, so it's now a dangerous box that has been opened. Speaking of dangerous boxes, that leads me on to the next section, which was focused around the virus that was created. In the final scene, we saw that Cardosa handed over the virus to Victoria Neuman, and it was the only kind of it that was in existence. This gives Neuman a ton of power, and even though she is a soup, we already know that she isn't necessarily on the side of them completely. So she could look to weaponize that virus for her own gain, something which could be extremely dangerous. Overall review. I thought this episode was so good. There were a ton of callbacks to the boys, and it really showed just how connected the universe now is. Whether it be Mallory mentioning Billy, Neuman appearing, the destruction of the plane, or Homelander killing that guy in the season 3 finale, it all flowed so seamlessly into the other, and it was so nice seeing it like that. As penultimate episodes go, I think it was executed very well. It's clear to see that the stakes are going to be so high in the season finale, and the disruption to the group is going to be at the forefront of it. We could even end up seeing Cate being killed, something which would be bold for the show to do. I'd be gutted if that did happen, as she's a great character, but I'd respect the show for doing it. They did a great job at making the effects of the virus look absolutely debilitating, and something that you'd be so scared of getting. The warts, coughing, blood, and physical deterioration looked horrific and like something out of a horror movie. It was something that also contributed to us seeing just how much of an evil individual Shetty was, and the mindset that she had. The reveal of Shetty wanting to get revenge was something that did make me feel for her and make me understand why she had her hatred for soups. But my god, she went all out in wanting to get payback, wiping out the entirety of the species. Now that's definitely a step too far. I'm looking forward to seeing how this season finale is going to go. The season has not been a disappointment in the slightest throughout the 7 episodes that we've been given. And with the stakes as high as what they are as we enter the season finale, I don't think it's going to be a letdown at all. Bring on the final episode. So, there you have it, Gen V Episode 7 Ending Explained. If you want to see more videos such as Endings Explained, then click on the I button. or alternatively you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of this episode? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.